So it's really easy to differentiate instruction within Schoology when you are creating assignments, but there's also some good tips and tools that are built into Schoology that allows for you to do this with ease and with specific groups. So let's talk about that differentiation through individually assigning assignments and also managing and utilizing grading groups to do that. So when we create an assignment, maybe I want to go into my writing assignments folder here, and maybe I have a new particular assignment that I want to give. I can see I have the compare and contrast school systems. I'm just going to go back into that assignment. And so we're going to look at the structure of this particular assignment that I have given. So I'm asking students to compare and contrast French and American school systems. I've got some pictures in here. And then I'm telling them how long it should be. So I can see here that I can actually give it a due date, and this particular original date was older, but let's say we want to give it a due date of maybe August 23rd. Again, it gives it a default time, but we can certainly change that time. Remember, we can change that time to whatever's appropriate. We'll talk in a different section about this, but these I've used some learning objectives for this assignment, so that's what these particular tags are. But maybe I don't want to give this to all of the students in my class. Maybe there's just a particular student that I'm giving some extra work to work on some assignment, or a smaller group of students. Let's say I've got an AP group and I wanted to give it to just my AP group that instead of my general group. One of the items that you have as an option when you're creating assignments, discussions, tests, and quizzes is you're able to individually assign. So if you hover over those three little dots that we look like we're juggling there, that's our individually assigned button. And if you remember, if it's grayed out, it's not active, but we push on it and make it in color, then it is activated. So I can select that, and if I scroll back down, you see it's now pulled up a new screen that says assign to. So I could start typing a name, and my student list would come up, and I could choose the name or names that I want to assign that to. So I could individually assign it just simply by clicking the names and adding the names. But now let's say there is a larger group of students. I'm going to refresh my screen there. Now it shows up in the upcoming. But maybe there's like 12 students I needed to put in that list, and I don't want to have to type all of their names at once, or I particularly have them, this is my AP group and this is my general group, and I categorize them all the time. Certainly that's a fine way to do it, but there's a quicker, easier way by utilizing the tool of grading groups within Schoology. And so to get to that, we would come into the course that you're the administrator of. We're going to want to come over to the members section in the left-hand column. And then I see my list of students in my course. I don't have too many in this particular course, so typing their names individually would not be hard to do. But I'm going to add a few more members to this course just to make my point and make it a little more interesting. So here's my list of students. So let me add a few more students into our course. All right, so there's my student list. Those students that have a name underneath them, that just means that their parent has connected to Schoology and to that student's work. So that's how you know if parents are in the system, just as a tip, because it's actually going to show their names underneath the student. Okay, so let's get back to our grading groups. You see in the upper right-hand section right here, it says organize members into grading groups. It's that simple. So I can click add grading group. Then I see my list of students, and so maybe this is my AP grading group. That simple. So I could choose the students that belong in the AP section, create the grading group. Then I could actually create a new group, and I might want to say general students. And so I could put a list of my general students. And then maybe I actually even have students that are on an IEP. So I want to put them in a group because I probably am going to give them some concessions on assignments. So I want or have specific assignments that I just want to give to them. So you can see it's created my groups, and now it's put these tags underneath each student of what group or groups they're in. They can be in multiple groups. Now the one thing I would point out, so I guess I could go back under general students, because I have not given an assignment yet, I could still put George and Neil in my general group, but they're also IEP students, so maybe I want to give them some other assignments. So you can see that it lists those. One thing to know is these grading groups show up for you and you alone. The student or the parents do not see that they are tagged with this grading group. So it's not like a scarlet letter that I can see that Georgie's on an IEP. This is just something to help you differentiate instruction for your students. So now if I went back to materials, and let's say we went to a class discussion, for example. I have this, should students use cell phones in school? And I went back into that particular assignment, let's say, and I wanted to have certain students participate in that conversation. I could enable grading on that assignment. Let's give it a due date of tomorrow. And let's say, actually say it's homework. We're going to kind of do this as a flipped classroom. And so I could go to this individually assign, and again, that comes up. But now, maybe I just want my AP students to have that discussion. Let me scroll down a little bit. So if I start typing AP, you can see that it brings up that group. And so now, if I save changes on that discussion, I will see that it's in the upcoming feed. But only students that are in that particular grading group would see that assignment because they are the only ones that it was assigned to. And if I come back to the grade book, for example, a really cool thing happens. You can see that the students that it was not assigned to, they're automatically excluded in the grade book from that assignment, and it doesn't count for or against them because it didn't apply to them. And only the students, Jennifer, Courtney, Donald, so the students that are in that AP group were assigned that assignment. So it actually feeds that information over to your grade book and saves you that time as well. So I could come back to materials and I can see that they have that assignment, and if I wanted to bring that assignment in and give it to a different group, or I wanted them to discuss it in different groups, I could do that. Now, one key tip I want to point out to you, I'm going to go back into my members, and I look at those grading groups. What I want to point out to you is we don't want to switch around students in grading groups once you have given an assignment with that grading group. So for example, I use that AP grading group to give that assignment of that discussion. Now, let's say if I came back to this and edited, and I were to remove Jennifer from that group because she no longer fell in that category, and I created that group, now watch what happens. If I go back into my grade book, that's now excluded Jennifer from that assignment. So what happens is it actually removes the student in any previous work that was assigned to that group. And it also, if I added somebody in there, then that work would then be missing for that particular student. So if you're going to move students around in grading groups, rather than coming and editing them and moving and adding and removing a student, I recommend that you just create a new grading group. So if I were to change up who belonged in that AP grading group, today is May 30th. So I could just say, AP group as of May 30th. And then I could choose the students, and I'm going to leave Jennifer out this time, and maybe I've got a few more people that have hopped in. I can make that group as of that date. So from that date forward, when I go to use that grading group to assign, I could actually just choose AP group as of 5:30. This one would remain there. I wouldn't delete it. I wouldn't edit it, but I would just start using this one from that point forward. The other cool thing is I could come into my grade book, and one of the options is I'm seeing all members, but if I just wanted to see what's going on with my students that are in my grading group as of that date, or students that are on an IEP and just see their grades, I could filter that down and see any particular group's work and how that particular group is succeeding or excelling or things like that. And I could print a report just on those particular students or look at how they are doing. So normally it shows you all members, but again, it does give me the option to filter it down. So again, we can come in when we're adding materials, we can always individually assign those particular assignments by clicking on the 3 dots that come up. and I can either type in individual student names, or I can type a group, or I can even type, here's my AP grading group as of 5:30. Oh, and you know what? I'm also going to assign it to this particular student as well. So I could do even a combination of the two. The grading groups really come in handy as well, just as one final tip on that, when you are giving tests and quizzes through Schoology. One of the tips is I don't have the ability with tests right now to exclude a student that happened to be absent, but I could create a grading group and I could say, hey, this is the test on 5:30. And I could put the students and pretend like I'm taking attendance, right? So let's say Neil and George aren't here. And then when I go to make that particular test live, and I'm not sure I have any tests in here, but if I were to make a particular test live, I would just choose that grading group. Or let's say even on an assignment, if I wanted to give an assignment only to the students that happen to be there that particular day, any of those particular interactive items, a test, quiz, and I wanted to exclude students that were not there. Again, a test is a little more functional for this, but I could say, choose that group, right? And I could save changes. Then what's really cool is when those other students happen to come back, I could always go back in to that test or quiz or to that assignment, and I could individually add them in and add them to that particular group. And it's Neil was the other one that missed it. That's why it wasn't showing up as his name. And then it would make it available to them. So that's a great way to use that tool to be able to individually assign things to groups and differentiate your instruction for your students.